So Maggie May. Yeah, look at that. The Beatles did a version too, didn't they? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, dirty Maggie May, that dirty, no good Robin Maggie May.
And then, like so many things on Let It Be, it breaks down, and then there you go.
Yep.
Hey, folks, and welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. Adrian, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah, we're here to talk about Rod Stewart today, and in particular his song Maggie May. And so we thought we'd start by looking back at the Beatles' version of at least the concept of Maggie May.
It's about it's an old Liverpool song about a prostitute. Yeah, that's the folk version that was just playing anyway. It was done by the Beatles. It's not the same as the song we're going to be talking about today, though.
That's right. But the tie-in there is that maybe he took that title for his song because he was kind of thinking about the antagonist in the song, Maggie May, along the same lines as one of those prostitutes in Liverpool.
Possibly. The woman's name was not Maggie May, but
Right.
It was written from a personal experience of his, I guess.
Right, that reminded him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, good old Rod Stewart. We touched on him a few weeks ago when we talked about Jeff Beck's Truth album. He, of course, sang on this. And it was the first album that Jeff Beck's group put out. Before that, of course, he was in Steam Packet. After that, he was in the Faces. But while being with the Faces, Rod also started putting out solo albums. So this one has varying covers, but it's his first album, and it also goes by An Old Raincoat, Won't Let You Down. I believe this is a 1969 release. And there's nothing on here that you would have heard maybe on the radio, but he does a great version of Street Fighting Man by the Rolling Stones and Man of Constant Sorrow. This is a great little LP. So Rod, he put that out. It's kind of bluesy, kind of rocky, kind of folky, and not that different from the Faces, which I think their first album came out the year later, which is also the same time that he would have put out Gasoline Alley, which is highly critically acclaimed, his second album. A lot of his early fans say, why couldn't you just keep making this album over and over again, Rod? And he said, well, I can't do that. It only sold about, 10 copies or something back in the day, and so he had to do something. And the Faces kept putting out records every year as well. So, this was a 1970 release. And the Faces had their next album out in 71. So, by now, Rod has sold 120 million albums. These were his early records. And actually, the song we're going to talk about is on his third album. Now, really, I only go for about the first 4 albums, and that's only relevant in that just about overlaps the same time period that he was in the Faces. And he was kind of making music that was similar to the Faces. But after that, he started having bigger hits even. Well, Maggie May was pretty big.
I think it was the song that put him on the map as a solo artist.
Yeah, that was the one. And that was on this one. The third album, Every Picture Tells a Story.
It begins with Henry by Martin Quittenton, who co-wrote this song with Rod Stewart. Again, it was written from Stewart's personal experience. He named it after the folk song, Maggie May. That wasn't the woman's name. He doesn't disclose that. It was, the title came from an old Liverpudlian song about a prostitute. It's a folk song, and it was recorded in 2 takes in the same session, except for the cymbals, which had to be overdubbed days later.
2 takes is pretty good. Put together, it's a 5-minute song. Maybe it's a 4.5-minute song without the Henry at the top. But every track on this record is great. He does Mandolin Wind. I Know I'm Losing You. I Know I'm Losing You is one a lot of people have done. Reason to Believe, a Tim Hardin track. Of course, Every Picture Tells a Story, which is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if all the lyrics are politically correct these days, but it told a really interesting story about him coming up in the music business as just a kid trying to make his way and what was happening to him at that time. It really wasn't so much about his career as what his life was, his personal life was at the time.
He started out as a teenager just sort of busking with the harmonica. Yeah, that would be 1961. Public performance, for those who don't know what busking is. Playing music out on the street for cash.
Yeah, well, so Maggie May, of course, it's one of Rod's most famous songs. It was a single. and it did well. It got tons of airplay. We've heard it probably 1,000 times on the radio, roughly, since it came out. It's got that super memorable opening riff. You know, and the thing on the mandolin at the end. And yeah, Rod is really in top form as a vocalist on it. The story is really strong. Lyrics are autobiographical again, you know, based on Stewart's own experiences as a young man in London. And this older woman apparently was a waitress he stumbled across. So the song, I mean, it was a huge success. It was number one.
It was a B-side originally, too. It's a B-side to Reason to Believe, I think.
Oh, yeah, okay. That happens more than you would think. You know, suddenly the B-side becomes a huge hit. I think that happened with Louie Louie, as a matter of fact. That's amazing. So, and now, even today, it's a classic rock staple. He was working with In the Faces at the same time with Kenny Jones, who went on to The Who after Keith Moon died. It also had Ronnie Wood, you know, went on to the Stones. If you're wondering about a hit they had, Stay With Me was a big one. The fourth one that I have, this is his album number 4 after that, which is 1972, Never a Dull Moment. This has hits on it like You Wear It Well, which I think was a big one on the radios. There's some other really good ones. I think Italian Girls is a really good song. He does a nice version of I'd Rather Go Blind, which is an Etta James standard. Strong record. Really, Rod's first 4 albums, if you like classic rock, are kind of on the slightly raw side, but still commercially viable to some degree. I mean, I know his first 2 albums didn't sell a hill of beans, you know, when they came out, but now they're considered classics, especially Gasoline Alley. But if you're just starting out with Rod, I strongly recommend Every Picture Tells a Story. I was just pulling out this record that I have by a band called Silver Meter, a short-lived band. It's got Mick Waller, who is the drummer. This here is Lee Stevens, ex-Blue Cheer guitar player.
Oh, yeah, I recognize the name.
And then down here, for all of you San Francisco fans, that's Pete Sears, who was in Jefferson Starship / Airplane and a few other bands. He darn near wound up in the Grateful Dead, I think, after Brent passed. In any case, this is an okay record. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. They've got 3 Elton John covers. So it must have been 1970, I guess, huh? Because it's all songs off his first 2 records, you know, so pretty close to the same time period, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting how much was going on in London. Everybody who's everybody in the rock world seems to run into each other and then cross-pollinate, you know, somehow or another. But I just always thought that was a master track, the Maggie May. It's one of the best tracks to come out of the classic rock era. Even though I've heard it a million times, I still like the song. So that's a pretty good testament right there. You know?
Well, I started listening to the song and I like it. I knew it was around for a long time. I never got around to really listening to it, though.
What's your general impression of it now that you've kind of given it a close listen?
Pretty good. I mean, it's, I don't know what I could say. It's well written. Got the nice mandolin part, you know, that sort of adds something to it.
I kind of like that about that era, too, especially in the UK. There seemed to be a lot of kind of medieval instruments making their way onto rock records. I mean, mandolin, you know, I know it's fairly modern now, too, but it goes back a ways. It's got a long history. They've got a very strong folk scene in that time period. I mean, that's where Fairport Convention came out of, and Sandy Denny and Nick Drake. There's a whole scene in London of these incredible people. I think that's kind of where Martin Quittenton hails from. But yeah, it's just wild. It's so nice because there was so many good musicians around, and they wound up on a lot of records. Yeah, so anyway, just wanted to share that after having gone through Jeff Beck's history and kind of stumbled on Rod. I thought it was worth giving him his due.
Probably about a month ago, I hadn't ever really listened to Rod Stewart. Now, you know, we've done the Jeff Beck Truth album. I started listening to him more then. And yeah, this is really the first time I really listened to any of his solo songs.
Well, I'm glad you got a chance to listen. I mean, there's something there, right? I mean,
yeah,
it seems like... I mean, I was quick to dismiss Rod Stewart when I was a kid, and I was hearing, "Do you think I'm sexy?" And, you know, I mean, Not that those aren't great
It's the
productions.
same thing here.
Yeah, but then I started realizing he had a career before that, and it was pretty cool. Check it out, those first 4 records, especially Every Picture. If any of you have any thoughts or experiences with Rod or anything you want to share, please leave them for us. And if you wouldn't mind, maybe give us a like, maybe subscribe so you can tune into our next adventure. Okay, with that, I think we're going to bid you adieu, and we'll see you next Friday. All right. Take care,
See you
folks.
folks later.